Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about the history of my modeling career. Now I know what some of y'all are thinking. What does this have to do with books? If last week y'all saw my vlog on how we transitioned from Cloud Orchid Magazine to Cloud Orchid Publishing, that'll give you a little bit of insight to why on earth I'm talking about this on my author and publishing channel. For a little bit of context, our publishing house, Cloud Orchid Publishing, originated from us putting together fashion magazines because we started out as I was working as a professional model and Bryan was working as a professional photographer. So that is the grand origin story of how we got here. And so talking about the history of my modeling career really does tie into how exactly we got here on this crazy journey called life. So to begin with, my modeling went all the way back to when I was a child. I actually did go through a program and was essentially trained to do modeling as a child, but my parents wanted me to focus on school, so unfortunately I didn't really pursue a career in modeling when I was younger. But once I graduated high school and was moving on to college, I was able to fully realize that part of my career path. And I started modeling through, there is this website online called Model Mayhem. And back in the day, back in 2008, this particular website was an absolute boon to the industry. So I started modeling back in 2006, but my career really took off in 2008 when I moved to the city, and I had far more mobility and access to photographers and events and fashion shows than I did when I was living in the suburbs going to community college. I basically was what's called a freelance model, meaning I was not signed on with an agency, and that meant that I had the freedom to do all my own bookings, but that also meant I had to do all my own bookings. Double-edged sword there. I had all of the freedom, but I also had all of the responsibility, and I took that on super seriously, y'all. I was doing a full course load of 16 hours of classes every semester. I was doing classes over the summers as well, while still modeling on top of that. I was going to 8 a.m. classes and then rushing home anywhere from noon to 4 o'clock, depending on how many classes I had that day. And then I was running off to casting calls, photo shoots, and fashion shows. And I usually wouldn't get home until anywhere from 8 o'clock at night to 3 in the morning, and then have to wake up or even just not sleep at all and go back to class and rinse and repeat. And it was a very exciting part of my life. It was so much fun, and I'm really glad that I did it. But of course, I do have some regrets. One of my regrets is because I was doing all of that, I didn't have time to have the college experience. And while I was going to art school, so I wasn't going to have the stereotypical college experience, we had no sports teams. I had no desire to go to sports teams, events, sort of things anyway. And there were no frats or sororities or any sort of clubs like that. It was an art school. But there were parties, and there were events, there were college events, campus events, and I did basically none of those. Very rarely I would go and I would hang out with the friends that I had. I went to a handful of parties, but that was a very rare, few and far between thing for me. The only really regular college thing that I did was me and my friends, after one particular class each week, we had a little hangout that we would do at the local Panera for an hour or two. But I always had to jet early because I had photo shoots and fashion shows and casting calls that I had to go to. I do regret not having more of a college experience, but I can't really say that I would have done my college experience any differently than I did because of where it's led me today and because of the amazing opportunities that I had. I had a very unusual college experience being able to work as a professional model alongside doing classes. In doing that, I built a lot of relationships in the industry with photographers and models and designers and magazines. I actually got in the know with several people that ran the fashion magazines that I would eventually become published in. And part of my accessibility and mobility was limited in that because my campus was downtown Chicago, the Loop, I didn't have a car. I owned a car, but it was kept at my parents' house in the suburbs because it is expensive, y'all, to have a car in downtown Chicago, to house it somewhere in a parking garage. And that just didn't make any sense for me to do at the time, especially with how good the public transportation is there. And I utilized the L and the bus systems and even the Metra, the trains that go out to the suburbs and even as far out as like Kenosha and stuff. I utilized all of that when I was living on campus in order to do all of this, to go to all these fashion shows and events and things. And it came with its own struggles and complications in that for a lot of these things, I was required to bring a lot of stuff. A lot of people don't realize that the modeling industry is not like what you see on like that show America's Next Top Model and stuff. That's fictional TV. That's like top tier Prada Fashion Week in Milan stuff. Normal models don't have all of that. People thought that I was getting limo rides to places. People thought that I had my own crew of stylists at my beck and call. No, that is upper echelon stuff. I basically had to do a lot of that stuff myself. I had to show up with my own wardrobe, and that's also when I started building my fabulous, I call it my dragon hoard. I currently have 4 closets. And the scary part is I have given away a lot of my wardrobe over the years too. So I used to have way more than this. But that was part of it, was that I had to start building this fanciful wardrobe in order to do all these amazing photo shoots. And while yes, I also had the opportunity to walk for fashion designers and do fashion designer photo shoots, the modeling industry is so much more than that. There's so much more to it. There's art modeling, there's alternative modeling, there's editorial there's just so much other stuff in the modeling industry that isn't necessarily what you first think of when you think of it. And a lot of it means that you have to kind of do it yourself. I had to learn how to do my own makeup. I'm not good at doing my own hair because, I mean, first of all, it's very long, it's curly, it's a pain to deal with. I learned really fast that a much easier solution was buying wigs. So anytime that I needed to be not this, I would just put a wig on and it just solved all my problems. Made it just easier for everyone. The photographer doesn't have to wait around for me to have my hair styled, and I don't have to try to bumble my way through doing an updo that I don't know how to do. A big part of that was having to navigate public transportation while taking with me sometimes anywhere from 1 suitcase to several suitcases. And let me tell y'all, in downtown Chicago, navigating public trans with huge suitcases and stuff I had to carry around, it sucked. It sucked, y'all. And that's why I would joke, modeling was my workout. People are always like, what gym do you go to? What's your workout? Modeling was my workout. Schlepping all that crap on public trans myself, having to walk everywhere, walking from my dorm to the different public trans, and then oftentimes having to take multiple public trans to wherever I was going, take this bus to that train and blah, 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 and all that. It was a lot. I was doing a lot of walking and a lot of hauling all by myself. So I was in amazing shape back then. But then once I graduated from college, things both got easier and more complicated at the same time, because after I graduated from college, I had access to my car again. I was in a living situation where I had an apartment, I had the ability to have my car. It wasn't in downtown Chicago, it was in a different neighborhood where you can actually park your car on the street and not have to pay a bajillion dollars for your car to be there. So that was when it opened up to me that I was able to start actually transporting myself not only to places within where I was doing public trans, but I could then go out of state. And that was awesome, that I didn't have to rely on photographers basically carpooling with me to drive me to events that they were also going to, which is a big part of how me and Bryan became friends, was that he would drive me to a lot of the photography events that were around Chicago and in Wisconsin. Is we were both going, and he was very generous, and he would schlep me and all my crap to and from the event. And that was so awesome. And having those long car rides are how we got to know each other and to be such good friends. And that evolved into going on all the fabulous adventures that we've gone on and having all the awesome adventures that we have today. But then I was also able to transport myself, which meant that I was able to do more events. And then that built into, I started doing national tours. And what that meant was that I would be out of state for anywhere from days to weeks at a time. My longest one was a full 30 days on I called it my Out West tour, where I drove all the way out to California and I hit up San Francisco and San Diego and then drove all the way back home to Chicago. And I stopped in many different cities in many different states along the way. And all of that took so much coordination, y'all, having to organize these huge tours where I was driving through all these different states and I had all these different photo shoots and events that I was doing in these different cities, and then having to coordinate to make sure, okay, I'm in Las Vegas right now. I need to make sure that in X number of days, I'm in San Francisco for this event and things like that. And then also figuring out all of that with gas money and feeding myself. And in order to save money, a lot of the time I didn't stay in a hotel. There were a lot of times that I would just sleep in my car, or again, building your community and your network. I had photographer friends who I could trust, who were very generous, that would let me crash on their couches at their houses. And that was a huge help too, knowing that I had these safe houses along the way so that I could save money doing my tours. And a big part of that trade-off is it wasn't 100% just out of their charitable hearts. The agreement was that the time that I spent not doing events and photo shoots with other photographers, I would then spend doing photo shoots of basically just about whatever they wanted. Within reason. There's a big asterisk there, y'all. Whatever they wanted in terms of the things they were allowed to ask me for. There was always a short list of these are the things that I'm willing to do as a model. It was a list. It wasn't just a buffet of whatever you want within reason. Asterisk, okay? Because I know what y'all are thinking there. It was not that kind of agreement. It was very much you have this idea that you want to bring to fruition, this cool photography idea. Okay, I have photo shoots on these days at these times. I have these days and times available. We'll pick those times and days, and then we'll photograph your series of hats, or we'll do this cool body paint idea that you have, or, whatever. That's how that worked. And it works awesome, and everybody got stuff out of it that they needed and wanted. And that's also a big part of the modeling industry, is that everybody's really close-knit. Everybody knows everybody. And the models would swap stories of these safe houses are legit, these are sketchy, these photographers are cool to work with, these photographers are not, all that kind of stuff. So there was so much important networking that went into making all of this possible. And a big part of that was on that website that I mentioned, Model Mayhem, which is this hub where models from not only around the country but around the world would talk on forums and also through DMs and stuff with each other and with photographers and stylists and all that. And you just build this huge network of people. Of these are the people that are cool to work with, these are the people that are not cool to work with. Oh, I see you worked with so-and-so, what was it like to work with them? People would also post casting calls on the website where then you could apply there and go from there. It was a super helpful tool, and it was just a catalyst in how I was able to organize all this stuff and be able to create all of this networking. And in growing my friendship with Bryan, we evolved my modeling career and his photography career, as well as this is what then transitioned into the magazine, which then transitioned into the publishing company, in that we started off with doing these fun group photo shoot events where it was photographers and models would get together at a studio and we would just do whatever. We would take awesome pictures, and some events had themes and some events didn't have themes. The pictures weren't really for anything. It was just the photographers had ideas they wanted to create, the models had ideas they wanted to create. Everybody was just trying to gain experience and do whatever projects that they wanted to do. That evolved into me and Bryan just doing photo shoots, just the two of us, just him as the photographer and me as the model, and us creating ideas that we wanted to create. Then that evolved to our first trip to OSR, the Ohio State Reformatory. And I've talked about that in several of the videos as well. It is the abandoned prison in Mansfield, Ohio. It is a historical building. And over the years, the historical society that purchased it has been renovating it. But the very first time that me and Bryan went there was shortly after it was purchased. And this place was a wreck. And it was cool. It's still really cool, don't get me wrong. But before they started restoring this building, it looked like a tornado had gone through there. And the reason why is because there were all the prison riots, and then people broke in there and broke stuff, and just decades of it rotting and things like that. So for instance, in the prison library, there were just tons of bookshelves that had just been knocked over, and just books everywhere, just exploded everywhere. And it was just, it was an experience, y'all. It's something that you just have to live, honestly. It was wild. And since then, we've gone back there to do various photo projects, and that's when we really started to transition more into doing editorial and art projects rather than just doing for funsies photography projects. And what that means is that we started creating photos specifically to submit to magazines, as well as creating photos, whether it was for local art events and art galleries and things like that, or just our own creations that we had an artistic idea that we really wanted to put together, meaning it was a full photo story. It was multiple photos that told a story, and not just, oh, this is neat, oh, this is a cool photo. It was, these all go together and tell a story. And so that evolution together of going to OSR led into going to other locations, such as the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and just also going to other various places. And then that built into us creating our own magazine, which then transitioned into what you all know today as Cloud Orchid Publishing. I ended up retiring from modeling in 2013, and there was a combination of reasons for why I did that. It was a very complex issue, and by that point I was so burnt out, and I was not doing well mentally or physically. And I did and I didn't want to retire from modeling, but it was definitely the time has come sort of thing. First and foremost, I had reached the age of 24, and I was very much aware that once you reach 24, the drop off for work plummets, because it doesn't matter what you look like, because I very much do not look my age. Many people have no idea how old I actually am. I'm 34. By the way. But looking at me, you wouldn't really guess how old I am. Most people think I'm significantly younger than I am, and back then I looked way younger than I was, which was sometimes beneficial, sometimes annoying, and sometimes a problem. But it, unfortunately, in the modeling industry does not matter what you actually look like. It matters what number it says on your driver's license, and that's just, unfortunately, an ageism thing that's in the industry, and it's not really going anywhere anytime soon. It's just kind of the way it is. And so I knew I was going to be aging out rather quickly, and that it wouldn't be able to be my profession anymore, because, y'all, modeling in that time period was paying my bills. That was my job. That was my 7 days a week, not even 9 to 5. That was like my 24/7. I paid the bills with my modeling. I did not have a day job. That was what I did for a living. And I knew that my ability to make a living doing it was about to go up in flames, and I had to start figuring out what to do next. So there was that. In addition to that, I also was at the very beginning of my divorce. My marriage was falling apart. There was a lot of ugliness going on in my life. I'm not going to get into because it's deeply personal. But yeah, it was a train wreck. It was awful. And it was a lot going on, and I couldn't, in addition to that, take the stress of the modeling industry, and on top of that, having to reorganize that I was going to be too old to make a good amount of money doing it. That was just too much stress. Could not do all of that at the same time. On top of that, that was also when Bryan went away to Afghanistan to work as an air traffic controller at a military base. He was going to be physically out of the country, so huge distance, as well as we were not going to be able to really communicate with each other. We only talked on the phone a handful of times a month, if even that. And there was zero way we were going to be able to do any sort of projects together. So it was almost like this person that was just a huge part of my world and made so much of this stuff happen was just gone in a lot of respects. And so that cut off a lot of my ability to do a lot of the things that I was doing at that time. And on top of that, with having to navigate all of this, what do I do with myself and dealing with all these things, I was starting to work on getting an actual 9-to-5 job, as in going into an office and all that kind of stuff. So it was a huge change in my life, y'all. It was a very difficult part of my life. It's not a part of my life that I like thinking about or talking about. But yeah, basically 2013 to 2015 was horrible, and it was hard. And I'm really glad that I saw it through, that I was able to pull myself up and pull myself out of that. And I was able to get myself on the road to where I am now. And yeah, I did work a 9-to-5 office job, and eventually I got laid off from that job and I got another 9-to-5 office job. But all through that, I was still determined to work as a creative person. Working as a creative person as an author, that's also a duh. I was doing that. But also in terms of, I missed working as a model and creating photography projects and delving into fashion and all that. And that's how I got into working as a drag queen. It was essentially my modeling life part 2. I got to dress up in all these fanciful outfits. I got to create these beautiful visual narratives, and it filled that hole in my creativity. And that's a big part of how I got into that, was seeking to fill that void of creativity in my life, because I'm the type of creative person where I have many different creative pursuits that are important to me. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm a performer. All of these things are very important to me in my process, and I need them in my life. Unfortunately, the pandemic has really put a damper on the whole modeling and performing aspect of my life for obvious reasons, but as I've gotten older, I've been able to make peace with that, whereas back then I was in my 20s and that was really hard to accept, and I wasn't ready to really let go of that part of my life yet. So that's a big part of how I got into that, and I got into the LGBTQ community and the drag community and all of that, and it was just this brand new world that I was able to become a part of, and it was just like with my modeling days, becoming a part of that industry. It was just so cool to be able to explore that and meet all those wonderful people, and some of them are still in my life and are still friends with me, and it's just been very interesting moving through these different creative spaces and meeting these different people and having these different experiences. And sometimes I do like to joke that I feel like I've lived 10 different lifetimes, because sometimes it really feels like I have, with all the different things that I've done. And that's why it's like, I don't know where my life is going to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because over the course of since I graduated high school, my life has gone in so many different directions and has changed so drastically from anything I could have ever imagined. And even retiring from modeling, I could have never imagined that I would turn into a drag queen. Any of the things that I've done, it's so wild to see how I've gotten here, and I'm really excited to see where I go from here. And as we work toward having a world that is opening up more and moving past the pandemic, it's still very much a part of our lives, and it's going to be until it stops being so much of a danger, unfortunately. But we're still taking steps to navigating this new world, and I'm certainly taking steps to navigate this new world in the capacity that I can, and I can't wait to see where this path takes me. So that's a little slice into my life, lifting the curtain for y'all to kind of see where I've been and why I am where I am now and all that jazz. So I hope y'all like this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.